Happy July 5th. Hope everybody still has 10 fingers, their face, their toes, or whatever you started with. If you started with 9 on the 4th of July, hope you got 9. Welcome to Wednesday morning, July 5th. 2 more days till 2 days of vacation, 2 more days till vacation for many of you. But it's another edition of Ham Solo, Summer School, Summer Hours. There's no name for it. But here in July, where the ham vacation continues, I woke up. I'm not going to lie, I woke up thinking about Brock Purdy and pie today. So that's what I want to dive into real quick before we all get on with our Wednesdays. Or if you're watching this, or I threw the last one on the podcast feed, and so we'll do that again today as well. If you're a podcast subscriber, if you're a YouTube subscriber, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that very much. We'll just spend some time trying to grow the old channel a little bit. All right, the prediction, what the number is going to be. I'll start with the prediction, and then we'll work backwards. We'll pay it off immediately. This is as we sit early July. What I think, it's a combination of what I think Brock's going to do if he plays 17 games, which is an if, right? Built from partly what he did last year, partly what the Niners quarterbacks have produced, and in their last 3 good years, and partly what I think they'll need in order to go back to an NFC Championship game, win the division, all that kind of stuff. So here's where I'm at right now: 28, 29 touchdowns. We'll go 29. 12 interceptions. Top 10 scoring defense. Top 5 in yards per attempt. Brock maybe top 4, maybe top 3 in yards per attempt, but top 5 yards per attempt. 29 touchdowns, 12 picks, and I said top 10 scoring defense. All that combination of things combined with the NFC, what the NFC is, what the NFC West is, and that's enough to give them a shot. Of those numbers, the top 10 scoring defense, the yards per attempt, the touchdowns, the interceptions, as crazy as this sounds, I think the touchdown number is the least important, in the sense that it's, I think, probably going to be kind of the most predictable. The question is, what's Brock's interception number? And are the Niners just as good on new defensive coordinator Steve Wilks? A little more unknown at defensive back this year than last year, I think, right? And, that yards per attempt number has been pretty consistent for the 49ers. Can Brock keep that up? But, man, that interception number, think back to last year. Niners played into the NFC Championship game. They lost 5. That was their 5th loss of the year. They won 15 games last year, including the 2 playoff games. 67% of their turnovers came in their 5 losses. 7 turnovers in their 15 wins. 67% of the turnovers came in the 5 losses. They only lost games in which they turned over the football multiple times. They did not lose a single game in which they turned over the football multiple times. So when Brock rolls out last year, throws 13 touchdowns and 4 interceptions in 6 regular season games. I'm counting the Dolphins game, and that's a full game. And then throws 3 more touchdowns and no interceptions in 2 postseason games. You think about that ratio, right? It's insane. I mean, that is about a 36 touchdown, 11 interception ratio. I guess that's not a ratio. That's just the raw numbers. If he had a season at that rate, he would have been second in the NFL in touchdown passes last year to Patrick Mahomes. And the interception number, that's right in line with what the best quarterbacks in the league do when you look back at last year. 7 turnover-worthy plays, according to PFF. That includes plays that could have been a fumble. 5 of those 7 turnover-worthy plays were with no pressure. And mostly a lot of those plays came over the middle, which, remember, we reacted to the video of the day that compared Jimmy and Brock. I mean, that is, you could hate that comparison, but that is Jimmy-esque, right? Over the middle stuff. The yards per attempt, second in the, now you got to, reduce some of the filters, but he was second in the league last year in yards per attempt. Only Tua, 8.9 to Brock's 8.3. So what did the Niners get in good years? How do we arrive at these numbers? 2022, 49ers quarterbacks, 30 touchdowns, 9 picks. That was everybody combined. Number 1 defense, points per game wise. The team that won the NFC was 8th in defense. Okay, so that's in line with kind of you need to be a top 10. Jalen Hurts, 22 touchdowns, 9 picks, but he ran for 13. So 35 kind of accounted for touchdowns, 9 picks. 9 picks, single-digit picks, top 10 defense. 2021, Niners got the NFC title game with 10 wins, with a top 10 defense, combined all their quarterbacks. Debo threw a touchdown, Trey threw 5, 26 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. So with the number 9 defense, 26-14, that feels like you are playing with fire. And they were playing with fire that year. But what was Jimmy that year? 2nd in yards per attempt to Joe Burrow. 2nd. Rams won the NFC. They were 15th in defense, not top 10, but their quarterback threw 41 touchdowns and 17 picks. The 2020 year, no Niners numbers worth using there, but my God, it's easy. It's fun to go back and look at. Rodgers was 48 touchdowns and 5 picks that year. Brady was 48-12, number 8 defense. Top 10 defense, went to the Super Bowl out of the NFC. 2019, Niners went to the Super Bowl. 28 touchdowns, 13 picks from their passing game. Emmanuel Sanders had 1. So it was really 27-13 from their quarterback. Top 10 in defense, 8th. Jimmy, 4th in the league in yards per attempt. Packers that year were top 10 defense, 26 touchdowns, 4 picks, got beat in the NFC Championship game. So, Rodgers was good, but not great, right? So that's kind of how I got to those numbers. The thing that I think, and I'm seeing in the comments, comes up a lot. What about all the turnover-worthy plays? Brock had a lot of turnover-worthy plays. He had drop picks, and that number is going to skyrocket this year. Well, A, it better not. B, it's absolutely a concern. Not just because of how he looked last year, but this is now what you're looking for is a full season from not a rookie quarterback. He's not a rookie anymore, but from a very young quarterback. So what do you do, right? And how do you account for the fact that he's got some playmaker in his bones? He's got some Romo. Everybody of a certain age, like, why play quarterback if you don't want to be kind of like Favre? That's the front of it. That's the fun of it. And we see it in his style, right? He came from an offense at Iowa State that at its best was wide open, high flying, all of that. But I think the one thing we know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, based on Kyle Shanahan's history, from quarterback to quarterback to quarterback to quarterback with the 49ers in recent years, is that yards per attempt number is going to be high because he's going to dial up plays. And you're going to have a very good run game, right? They've committed a ton of money to their running backs. You're going to have playmakers on the outside. So as much as we debate the things that Kyle Shanahan does, the fact is that a lot of this is based on him picking the right time for the right thing and the quarterback doing that thing. And, I think there's a lot of expectation about some sort of regression for Brock, rightly so. I wonder about it all the time. But I also think the flip side of that is there are things you would think that he gets better at, even though he's got an elbow surgery to rehab from. So maybe he doesn't get to spend as much time getting better at some of the stuff he did last year because he's got to spend some of his time just getting himself back to his baseline. I think it's reasonable to think he'll do some things better. He'll have to adjust a little bit because a lot of defenses are going to adjust to him. But again, you look around the NFC and you go, well, if not them, who? Philly, fine. Dallas, I think we've seen Dallas now for 2 years in a row, kind of we've seen them with an incredible offense. We've seen them with an incredible defense the last 2 years, right? Incredible defense last year, incredible offense the year before. They are just going to be fundamentally, doesn't mean they can't go to the NFC Championship game, and they're not a real threat because they were a threat last year to the 49ers, but they just have some fundamental flaws. And outside of the Eagles, that's everybody, including the Niners. There are some basic fundamental questions. And I think there are some about, the Eagles changed both coordinators. So there's questions for them too, but I think a little bit different for them. So that's where I'm at, 29-12. I actually started this at about, before I started looking at the numbers, where I thought I'd land is about 27-14. But looking at kind of that 2021 season when they were 26-14 with Trey Lance throwing 5 of those 26 touchdowns and 2 of the 14 interceptions with a top 10 defense. The reason I went 29-12 is I think that's closer to what they need. Now you could argue 26-14, maybe that gets it done this year. But being a wild card team in this NFC would feel pretty weird. It'd feel pretty weird. I mean, this is not Aaron Rodgers' NFC. This is not Tom Brady's NFC. This is not still a solid player, Matt Ryan's NFC. We'll see what kind of Matt Stafford NFC this is. So, if you ended up at those 2021 numbers and you were a 10-win team, that would feel pretty weird. Bad weird, right? Now maybe somebody would counter and say, well, 26-14, you'll win more than 10 games with that this year. There are some very clear markers for how the 49ers win games, and we all know them. Run the ball, play defense, don't turn it over. And that, to me, that's the most important number there. I know they're going to be a good defense. I know what Kyle's offense is designed to do. It's to have a quarterback who doesn't to have a quarterback who plays off the run. And when he does, he throws the ball, really does, right? Now, part of it might be McCaffrey. These aren't air yards. Part of it might be Debo, right? But there's enough there that Brock should be top 5 yards per attempt this year. So that number is, I think, pretty predictable. The defensive number is pretty predictable. I think even the touchdown, if you play 17 games for Kyle Shanahan, you should throw 26 touchdowns, right? It's the interception number. That's the number. 5 losses last year. The only 5 games in which they had multiple turnovers were the 5 games they lost. So that's where I'm at. 29-12 today. I already put that one up. Let's see here. Robbie says Purdy's the only QB in the league that gets the dropped interception stat. I think Robbie is defending Brock there by saying it gets brought up a lot with Brock, but not as much with other players. That might be true, but I also think part of it is so much of Brock Purdy is us trying to figure out what was real last year. You don't bring up dropped picks with Mahomes after several years of greatness because you know, right? You just know. So I got no problem with that stat being brought up all the time. I bring it up. I think it's fair. I'm trying to figure it out. You're gonna get touchdowns dropped. You're gonna get interceptions dropped. 6, 7, 8 games basically is his sample size. If I count the Miami game, 6 plus 2 postseason games, 8 games, half a season's a sample size. I keep saying it, but for those who haven't heard it, the example I keep using, Geno was an MVP. Geno Smith was an MVP candidate for 8 games last year. And still that Seattle team won 9 total games. I saw this stat today. I was reading an article in The Athletic from a couple days ago. One question for every team they did. It was a good article. Lombardi's for the Niners was DBs, but Jordan Rodriguez, who covers the Rams, wrote, the Rams have 40 rookies and 2 of their 3 core players coming off off-season surgery. So, and then you got Arizona, who's not going to have Kyler when the season starts, and they got a new coach, and God only knows how ready Kyler is, right? So it's really not a year to mess around in your division. And, you should go 5-1 in the NFC West. A loss to the Cardinals under any circumstances would feel terrible. And, you've had a good track record with the Rams, but I can't assume sweeps there. They're a good they've got a good coach. They've been a good football team. I still think Stafford's got something. And Seattle could get you. So you got to win some swing games there, right? Kid Lou says, I think Purdy has a minimum of 4 rushing touchdowns this year. I think it'll be very interesting. I've been trying to find player-specific QB sneak numbers, not touchdown numbers, just QB sneak numbers. Because Jack Coletto, who the Niners added, Jimmy was very good at those sneaks. Brock's not as good at them as Jimmy. Jimmy was elite at quarterback sneaks. Remember the Niners tried to use check once last year. Jack Coletto, who they got as an undrafted free agent from Oregon State, the jackhammer at Oregon State, played some linebacker, but he's very good short yardage. I wonder if Kyle would use him if he makes the team. I mean, they may not have a spot for him. Big Des says 25 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. That feels like a borderline. That's borderline to being good enough. Jets Gang says it's Geno's NFC. I got the Seahawks as being the top team. I do not. I mean, I know they're better. Bobby Wagner, by the way, does people realize Bobby Wagner's back at starting at linebacker for the Seattle Seahawks in 2023? People know that? Are people aware of that? That's happening. Here's another comment. I don't think Purdy's the starter in 5 years, but Lance's cheeks. God, that saying is so good. I think anytime you've got a quarterback and somebody says to you, is that quarterback the quarterback 5 years from now? The odds are always against that quarterback being that team's quarterback 5 years from now, with exceptions. We can feel good about predicting Josh Allen. You can feel good about Herbert and Mahomes, blah, blah, blah. But the vast majority, is the odds are stacked against him. The odds are stacked against two-bedroom Brock. So I'm calling him, because he's making $900,000 this year. You can get about a two-bedroom in his neck of the woods for $900,000. Where is the evidence that Lance's cheeks and a bust? Well, they used the third-round pick on him, and he's not their starting quarterback right now. So we could get further into the details of whether he's a bust or they busted or it's not his fault. We've done a lot of that. I'm sure we'll do more of it. We'll see what happens. But when you draft the quarterback third and he's not your starting quarterback 2.5, 3 years later, it hasn't worked. I don't know what else to call that. Jay Mill says, let's not forget Ayuk dropped a perfectly thrown pass that would have been the cherry on top in that playoff game against Seattle. Yeah, and sometimes guys are going to catch balls that have no business getting caught. Robbie asked, how can the 49ers find diamonds in the 5th, 6th, and 7th rounds, but their evaluation of Trey Lance was so bad? Gun to your head, who's at fault? I mean, the answer in these things is usually everybody. Eval, development, it's hard to ever really know. I mean, we could give an answer, but to really know is difficult. There's so many factors. How do they find guys in the 5th, 6th, and 7th? But the Trey Lance, I mean, I guess one thing I would say about the Trey Lance eval or just that whole situation was anytime you are making decisions with any bit of desperation being part of your decision making or being why you're doing what you're doing, you open yourself up to making a mistake. If you're doing something out of character, or if you are, putting yourself in a position where you got to do something that you might not otherwise do, then you increase the likelihood that you make a mistake. So they did that, right? They decided we need a quarterback. I was on board with it. Because I thought Jimmy wasn't good enough to win a Super Bowl. They pushed that it was because Jimmy doesn't stay healthy. I said I thought they were kind of covering there because they wanted to trade Jimmy. But I do think they believe that. I think if Jimmy was healthy, they wouldn't have done this. If Jimmy had just been healthy, they would not have traded up for Lance. So they decide we need a quarterback. So what do? When you decide we have to get a quarterback, you immediately limit your options to only those quarterbacks. And it's not going to be the first quarterback who's Trevor Lawrence. And whoever the second quarterback is, it's not going to be that guy. So you've said, we need a quarterback. Great. Should we scour the earth? No. We're going to pick between 3 guys, Fields, Mack, and Lance. All right, so already you've put yourself in a desperate situation and you've narrowed your focus to only 3 people. That's it. Then they traded up to 3. Now they really got to draft a guy. And what if they got up to 3 and said, the best player, actually, now that we're up here, isn't the quarterbacks. We should take one of these other guys. Oh, we can't do that. We traded so much. It'd be silly to move up here and then take an interior lineman, whatever. So I think that's part of it. It's like you just put yourself in a situation where you are very likely to do something out of character and make a mistake. So that's That's my long answer to that short question. Garoppolo comes from the Tom Brady school of quarterback sneaks. He does. And I think of mechanics. Does not come from the Brady quarterback school of never getting hurt, basically. Here comment from Dan. People are slow at realizing Wagner signed with Seattle as Wagner is at catching a ball carrier these days. Yellow Spy for $2. American. $2 American. Says, do people know how old B-Wags is? Honestly, I don't know how old B-Wags is. B-Wags is 33 years old. When is his birthday? His birthday is June 27th. So he just turned 33 years old. I assume you knew the answer when you asked that. Third string All-Pro, 32 and 8 touchdowns for Purdy. Debo, Ayuk, and McCaffrey all go for 1,000. If Debo, Ayuk, and McCaffrey all go for 1,000 and Purdy throws 32 touchdowns and 8 interceptions, then Kyle Shanahan will get his Coach of the Year award. 32 touchdowns and 8 picks. That is MVP candidate. That's bold, Cotton. That is bold. Let's see. Anything else to add here? All right, there we go. So there's the prediction. We'll see how that plays out. We'll talk more about it. By the way, the other thing I said, I woke up thinking about Purdy and one other thing this morning. The other thing I woke up thinking about today was pie. After the 4th of July, I had pie, peach pie, a la mode, ice cream on top. Maybe you had some pie yesterday. I enjoyed it, but I also went to bed thinking I just missed a little something. And this morning, in a half days, what I thought my comparison is that pie is like documentaries. It can be really good. Some artisan worked really hard on it. You feel better about yourself after consuming pie because it's got fruit in it, just like you feel better about yourself after watching a documentary because it's educational and informational. But sometimes you just want something dumber with more sugar. And that's why I watched Extraction 2 with Chris Hemsworth. It's just straight up chocolate cake. And that's why you got to add ice cream, I think, to pie. I like pie, but it's just doesn't always hit the spot like ice cream does. Just like a documentary. It's like, oh, did you what? You tell people about the documentary, but it doesn't quite feel like Friday night the way that some just shoot 'em up Western something does. So that was the other thing I thought about this morning. All right. There's the predictions. There's the numbers. If I'm missing any factors that I should have considered, then let me know in the comments after this YouTube is posted. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and check out the GameTime app where you can use the code HAM to get $20 off tickets to games. I used it on July 3rd to attend the sellout game between the Mariners and the San Francisco Giants. I had a great time. So shows, concerts, whatever you're doing this July, summer, you're buying football tickets in advance when those go on sale. Are they on sale? Promo code HAM, GameTime app. HAM. I am the H in HAM. Ham Solo. Out. We'll be back again soon, probably. And it's fun just chilling. Extraction 2. Good call. All right. Thanks for another casual morning. Have a great Wednesday. You're almost to the weekend. Later, everybody.